Today we have two great panelists. The person that we will be talking to is Brett Copeland. Brett W. Copeland is an advocate for more than a decade in Washington, D.C. in politics. He's also a union activist and a former executive director of Veterans Centric NFP. That's a not-for-profit. Also, today's discussion will be surrounded around veterans used to flock to rural communities, but has farm life lost its appeal for American veterans? That's the question. Is the farmland being abandoned by our veterans? And is there a need to start looking at this and looking at the things that happen around that? Why is that happening right now? So, Brett, how are you doing today?
Well, Colonel Arnold, thank you for letting me join the governor's airwaves again. It's an honor to be back here. Doing well, and that is the big question. What can we do to get veterans back into agriculture? After World War II, there was a huge influx of veterans after they served overseas, coming back to the American heartlands and going back to their farms and really providing the food for not just the United States, but for much of the world. But as of 2017, the last time we did an ag census, there were 351,000 men and nearly 20,000 women who were both agricultural producers and U.S. veterans. About 300,000 of them had spent more than 10 years on their farm, and they make up about 129 million farm acres. Now, those sound like pretty big numbers, but since 1992, the population of just ag producers in America has dropped from 6.6 million to 3.2 million in 2018. Wow. So veterans are a large part of that. And where I lived and worked in Iowa for a long time, we were in hog country. A lot of my neighbors raised hogs. There's 184,000 veterans in Iowa. 9,200 of them live in poverty, and 149 are homeless. Now, these are pretty old numbers because we haven't done an ag census since 2017. We're going to set to do one here soon. So we won't know the real change that has happened over the last couple of years for a while, but it's been hard to be a farmer. Pork exports are lower this year since 2011 because of things like the trade war that happened during the Trump administration. And, of course, we saw in the news all over the country where farmers were essentially plowing in their crops during COVID because they couldn't get it moved through the supply chain. So there's a lot of challenges when it comes to just the way life is currently for America's ag producers. I think for years we've seen stories about, especially in the dairy industry, with just the massive amounts of suicides of desperate dairy farmers. And I think that there's a lot of comparisons that we can do in the challenges that veterans face when it comes to mental health and the stresses they face that ag producers do as well.
Wow, that's a really staggering numbers you just gave, and I had no idea that was really going on to such an extent. It sounds like almost half of the agricultural workers force decreased from 6.6 to 3.2 million by 2018. And from what you're saying right now, it sounds like that's not getting any better anytime soon right now, right?
It's certainly not. And, the farm bankruptcies, just in the last year, we have record levels of debt within agricultural producers. It's the highest number of bankruptcies since 2011. We got about $416 billion in farm debt in 2019. That is a record high. That includes $257 billion in real estate debt and $159 billion in non-real estate debt. So it doesn't seem like there's a ton of incentive for people to get into agriculture. And at the same time, you've seen a real contraction of the way that farming is done. Family farms are pretty much non-existent anymore when it comes to kind of your mom and pop operation. And part of that is because just land is so expensive these days. In 2017, it topped out about $10,000 per acre for about 80 to 200 acres purchase. Now it's averaging between $7,000 to $13,000 per acre. Now, that's a ton of money if you are starting out on even just a modest farm. I know one of the veterans that I talked to in preparing for this story really wanted to get into agriculture, but she just could not scrape up enough money to even purchase a 20-acre farm. And there were no programs at the state or federal level that could really give her that leg up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how many acres do you need to have a farm? Is 20 acres like approximately what the average farm size is?
Well, it really depends on kind of your motivation. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of kind of small-town farmers, they had kind of left the farm and went and got jobs in town and then kind of did farming for, their local farmers markets or for fun on 1 to 4 acres. But a lot of this consolidation that is happening at the corporate level is a lot of these farmers want to stay in business. So they're looking for a way to keep their operations running, and big hog operations, big meat processing plants, can provide a lot of that in so that they can stay on their land, but they're forcing farmers to absorb all of the risk. And if there's a loss, the farmers are going to be the ones who eat that rather than these corporate meat packers. And in Iowa, our confined animal operations really predominate family farms. In 2017, 3/4 of egg-laying hens in America were owned by just 320 farms. That's about 900,000 birds in annual inventory. And 95% of American hogs were raised at farms that sold 5,000 hogs a year. At that same time, independent farmers sold on average 43 hogs a year. So we're really talking about David and Goliath when it comes to producers really trying to compete in the marketplace and be successful.
Yeah, because you have different types of farms, I imagine, right? You have farms that are centered around hogs and cattle and meat processing, and then you also have farms that are centered around corn, soybeans and grains, and now there's a big movement towards fresh fruits and vegetables, trying to get those into markets so that people can, have access to that. And I'm a big proponent for that, for natural, farming and getting people into, getting nutrients for their bodies. And many people are really poorly nutritionalized, right? They don't eat the way they really should be eating. And so now... So is that
and that's the thing about living in rural Iowa. We have all this great farmland around us, but we are essentially living in a food desert. It's hard. I used to joke that we were the last stop in the grocery store's distribution chains because our fresh fruits and vegetables were gone bad in just a day or two. So access to those kinds of things and access to things like mental health and just healthcare in general, my community was lucky enough to have a VA outpatient clinic, but the next one was 90 miles away for a full-blown medical center. And we were the only ones in our corner of northwest Iowa to have a VA health center that close.
Yeah, and the needs in the agricultural realm, my background is I'm an internist, but also I did a residency in occupational and environmental medicine. And one of the areas where in farms, they really need that support for the medical care. It is absolutely something that people need to realize, and you really need to have federal support and making sure that people have access to the proper medical care for our farmers. If it were not for them, we would not be able to eat.
And farming is hard work, especially when you're dealing with hogs. It is, with veterans having so many co-occurring medical conditions, whether they were exposed to Agent Orange or exposed to burn pits, there's a lot of respiratory problems there. But they found that around these large corporate hog confinement pens, the communities around there have cancer rates that are almost 30% higher than non-rural settings. So there's a lot of dangerous stuff that goes into agriculture that if we're going to really want to encourage veterans to start farming, we really need to take a look at that healthcare angle from it. But, it's one study in North Carolina where there are also a lot of confinements found that there was lower life expectancy, higher rate of infant deaths, asthma, kidney disease, tuberculosis, and blood poisoning than those who lived further away. Dangerous levels of ammonia, have been measured near massive hog sites in Iowa since the early 2000s. But there's really a lack of initiative because so many farmers, they do their jobs, and so many veterans do their jobs and just get it done and don't complain very much. But it's really going to take us working together to raise the issues about how to, not only make our farmers successful, but make sure that we are good stewards of the land and, help them be good stewards of the land, because that's what they want to do. That's where they get their bread. And they want to do right by the land. But right now, corporations are really making that profit incentive so that you trash the land, you trash the worker, and you take the buck at the end of the day.
Oh, that's horrible. And that's un-American to me as well. It does not fit in with what we should be doing. And I'm kind of a nonpartisan guy. I don't, like lean towards one political party or the other. I lean towards the one that's actually supporting people at the time and what they're doing. So I had, I made these terms up, for the DNC, do nothing continuously, and then for the GOP, I had gathering of psychopaths, So I have all of my different terms for them. But I'm hoping that at this point, they're waking up and learning how to work together, and making sure that they are addressing the issues that are germane to the American people. I served as a director of public health for Illinois State back in 2007 to 11, and one of the legislators asked me one day, why is it that, why did you select taking this job? Because you're already in the military. It's in the military for 26 years, and I told him, I said it was for 3 words, and he said, 3 words? What are you talking about? I said, they're above your chamber. We, the people. And we have got to get back to the idea that it's the people that, select the legislators. It's the people that society is supposed to be supporting. And whether it's corporate, massive corporations or whatever, you are still the only reason why you are existing is to support the people, and you have to do it in the right way.
Well, and so far in agriculture and in my experience in working with veterans and advocating for veterans on Capitol Hill, I think that it is a real bipartisan problem.
Yes.
One of our Republican lawmakers in Northwest Iowa, John Wills, he's one of the most powerful Republicans in the Iowa State House. And he claimed at one point that he was not aware who this corporate organization was, ALEC. He had no idea who they were, and he was not taking any tips from them on how to write legislation. It didn't take long for us to find Mr. Wills listed on ALEC's website with his photo there.
Oh.
At the same time, Obama administration Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, who was also the governor of Iowa, Democrat, for a long time, and who is now the current Secretary of Agriculture, has been witness to this corporate takeover of family farms and has seen and overseen a lot of the things that have driven that 6 million to 3 million drop in producers across the country. So if both parties are serious about not only taking care of farmers, but taking care of veterans and making sure that both can compete economically and live healthy, fulfilling lives, then something else needs to be done on the way that we're looking at agriculture and veterans issues. There's lots of programs out there that claim to want to help veterans get into ag. But when they're coming in, kind of at a base level, who can afford $500,000 and a little bit of land when you're competing, when your neighbor is a big corporate ag producer? It's really hard to break into that market and compete. And as we saw over the 2020, local food systems are critical if we want to continue to make our communities healthy and be prepared for emergencies like we found ourselves in this last year. So I really have been encouraging lots of folks not to think about just not American-made and manufacturing. That's important. But we also need to think about American-made when it comes to our food. We have great producers here in the United States, a lot of whom are veterans, and we need to do more to support them.
So how so let's say I'm a veteran and I want to get into the agricultural business. Where should I go? How do I start looking at that? and it's actually something that always. If I had passed away, and I was reborn, one of my dreams was always to own a farm and to have horses and do those kinds of things. So is there a website? Is there a way that they can contact your organization and really talk about how they can get involved in this?
So there's a lot of veteran coalitions. If you just go on to like Google and search for USDA's veterans programs, there are a list of resources there. I found in my research that a lot of these websites kind of are defunct, haven't been touched since kind of the big initiatives rolled out in 2014 and 2017, but haven't been updated much. But a lot of that information will at least give you a start. To be honest, it is hard to break into ag. You either got to have land already, you got to have a big investor, or you got to tie your horse to somebody else's carriage. It is incredibly hard to start up in agriculture if you are starting from scratch, essentially, which shouldn't be how it is.
Right.
But this is really a bipartisan problem, and I know Iowa's lawmakers at least have not gotten serious about how to solve this. So many rural communities, as those numbers I mentioned at the top have shown, are being emptied out. And a lot of that is because these smaller ag producers, these diversified farms, are disappearing.
Wow. So what is that doing to our market, as far as getting, fresh fruits and vegetables to the table? And, because, you have the large agricultural groups out there, the Monsantos of the world and that kind of thing. What is the impact on the local economies in these rural communities?
Well, we always talked about the farmers around a community really power that community. You're seeing the same kind of corporate takeover when all those mom and pop shops are disappearing and kind of the Walmart and Dollar Generals come in. And they are providing a service, granted, but it's because all of those other folks decided that they couldn't make it anymore, selling goods and services at that kind of level. Mm-hmm. So it's that same kind of corporate threat, corporate takeover, that is keeping competition out of America's small towns. And that hurts, a lot of folks.
Yes. And what about the farmers markets? I see those around all the time now. In the Chicagoland area, and actually in central southern Illinois, that there are a lot of those popping up. And it seems as though people are bringing food in from their farms, to sell it in the open market. And actually, I love those markets. I go and try to buy my food from them, my fresh fruits and vegetables from them.
Well, farmers are super innovative, so they're always looking for a way to save a buck or make a buck, right? Especially from the things they produce. Don't want anything to go to waste. So I know a lot of folks will have just stalls right off their farm or go into town and find some of those farmers markets and, bring their produce there. It really depends on, I think, the community that they're in and the community's commitment to keeping agriculture alive. And sometimes it works, and sometimes, a lot of folks are struggling in rural America right now. Yes. And unless they're all working together, it's hard to overcome kind of that, just the reality of the economic landscape out there. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity here. It shouldn't be this hard to get into farming, and we have a lot of great producers out there who are doing good work. I think opening up more of those local markets, not just kind of at a farmer's market level, but figuring out how we can get that little plot of the farmer decided to take away from their main crop and just do fruits and vegetables on their land, and helping that get into the local supply chain would be huge.
Yeah, because you also have other groups now. I've seen more like in things like Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, where they're allowing farmers to bring in and set up vegetables and fruits and that kind of thing within their sphere. So that's
absolutely. And lawmakers could do, huge things if they could help cut through some of that red tape, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, and making sure that these food co-ops can kind of get started.
Well, how can people find out more about your organization, Rural America Veterans and Communities Matter?
So I'm actually just kind of an independent commentator at the moment. This is just kind of all original research that I'm working on collecting. I know I would check out. One of my friends is an incredible rural and food writer, Austin Frerick, and he just has a new piece on Vox.com with Charlie Mitchell that details the way that corporations have taken over the landscape in Iowa, especially when it comes to hog farming.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm going to bring in our executive producer. But thank you so much, Brett. You have really illuminated my understanding of this whole issue about rural farming and why it's so important and why rural veterans should be staying within these rural communities. It's the heartland of our country. So we have our executive producer, Glenda Smith, who is going to make an announcement.
And Brett, thank you, because your intelligence is so eclectic, and you and I have been working together on another project, so we are so happy to have you as a partner of America's Heroes Group on rural America, because no one can do it like you. So thank you so much. Looking forward to your next show. Absolutely. In regards to information and resources that's needed about affordable housing, social services, wellness care, please feel free to call America's Heroes Group at 312-803-2618. We're located at 155 North Walker Drive, Suite 4250. Please allow me and America's Heroes Group to apologize for the first hour. We were having some major audio technicalities, and so we finally got the system right. So for the first show of We Build Your Credit, Lisa gave some phenomenal information. And then the second hour, Tayback Law, she did a continuation of veterans refiling based on the past denial of your benefits. So please go to our website, www.americashg.org, and download the podcast to listen to the first two shows that you couldn't hear through live Facebook. Great information, absolutely great information. And so today we start a weekend of honoring and saluting past and present veteran men and women who have sacrificed their life for this country. What more can we say beyond thank you? Because when you have not walked in their boots, then you don't realize what they've done for this country. So on behalf of myself, I personally say thank you to them and their family members, because you defend our Constitution, the reason why we have freedom like we have. It's kind of eerie what's going on in Washington right now with the past January 6th episodes, and how the elected officials of one side can't understand what this means to us, to get an understanding of what happened so it can never happen again. Shame on you. And I mean it. Shame on you. So personally, I say thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, Dr. Arnold?
Yeah. And, I was mentioning a little bit earlier, but, I have, I am kind of I'm getting more and more into the category of being nonpartisan. And I am, when something happens in our country, we have to get back to truth. Mm-hmm. We have to get back to the Constitution and the rights of our people and why we have to support them. And, I was looking at DNC, and I said, maybe that's do nothing continuously. Maybe GOP is gathering of psychopaths. I mean, I have no idea of what people are thinking right now.
Exactly.
The legislators have to come together and build this nation. Support the President of the United States. If you are a military person, you should be supporting the President, bar nothing. And that is what we are as a civilization. But I just want to mention two people who got the Congressional Medal of Honor. Private Henry Johnson, who was 369th Infantry, also known as Harlem Hellfighters in World War I, and Reuben Rivers, who is up for, he got the Congressional Medal in World War II. For the Black 761st Tank Battalion, also known as Patton's Panthers. And then we have Melvin Morris, who's going forward for a Silver Star. He got a Silver Star. He's going forward for his Congressional Medal. We wish well. He was a Vietnam War medic.